Hello, everyone. This is Tannery Leatherstein. Welcome to Leathertainment Studio Podcast here. At another episode, we have Filip Bergman here from Richard Hoffmans Tannery in Germany. I was a fan of their leathers for a long time now with a lot of exhibitions that I've seen articles. I never got to work with them so far yet, but we have connected with Filip a couple of weeks ago and we wanted to do this discussion today, kind of touch up on his leather expertise and sustainability aspect of leather and tanning industries. So we're going to start with welcoming Filip here. Filip, welcome. Thanks for
Yeah,
taking the
thank you
time
so
to be
much for
here.
inviting me. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We
uh,
can start with getting to know you, introduce yourself and your story with leather. How did you get
yeah.
into it?
My name is Philip. I'm the sixth generation of Tannery Richard Hoffmans. We've been around since 1899, and next year is going to be our 125th anniversary. We're located in West Germany, close to Düsseldorf, and we make leather mainly for handbags and shoes.
That's awesome. Well, sixth generation is impressive. 1899. Um, whenever I ask this question, how you get into leather, usually there is a series of incidents or coincidences that pulled people into leather. But I guess, like me, that wasn't the case for you. You were born into this, which made it easy to get in, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
as far as I know, you studied the subject as well at school, the best school, leather tanning school that exists today, which was my dream school to go to when I was in high school. Dabbling into leather and tanning, but it wasn't an option at the time. I ended up studying business in Turkey. But can you tell us a little bit about that school? Where did you learn the theory of tanning leather? How was the whole experience? This might help maybe some people give an idea how you might get into the tanning industry or career if you're looking for something, or maybe some parents to discuss with their kids, if that's something of an interest, because it's not a very well-known subject. People may not know like how you become a tanner. There are some ways, so this might be a good way to introduce that school to the people here.
Yeah, exactly. I went to the University of Northampton. More specifically, it's called ICLT, which is the Institute for Creative Leather Technology. It's been around for a long time. Even my grandfather went to that school. Back then, it was called the Neen College. And it is the only place worldwide where you can study leather and obtain a bachelor's degree of science, so a BSc in leather technology. It's around for bachelor's it was around 3 years, and then yeah, you learn everything from theory to application, methodology, how tanning works, how retanning works, finishing. You do a lot of different use cases for what type of leather is desired. You learn how to make fashion leather, upholstery, garment, automotive, basically anything that you're really interested to. So I do believe it's a great school, and it really helped me a lot to further my knowledge in terms of knowing things about leather. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like dream to me. I still today sometimes check their website. I know they have some shorter professional programs, like 6 months or a year programs. Maybe if I find a chance to go there someday, that would be a dream come true. Um, so what do you do after the school, or what did you do after the school? What are the graduates do once they graduate from there?
So essentially, because there are really not a lot of people that are coming into the industry, you get eaten alive by basically any firm that has a desire for finding new people, and which is everyone at the moment. We can't get enough qualified people that are interested in making leather. And as soon as you're in your second year, it's you get a lot of different job offers from industry. So you have people that go directly into purchasing for fashion brands, or you have people that go into purchasing for automotive manufacturers. I remember a friend of mine went to Bentley directly after he graduated. And a lot of people also, they go to tanneries. Fashion brands is, of course, very high on the list in the US as well as in Europe. And then, of course, you can find any job in as a leather technician, either in operational management or actually research and development for large leather manufacturers in fashion or automotive usually. And then also you have what is it called? Let me let me remember this. Yeah, you can go into the chemical industry as well. So there are a lot of job offers from all different sectors that have to do with the leather industry in general.
That sounds like a great career first step, you know. A lot of people thinking like what to be at that stage in their life in the college. So this sounds like a very unique industry you can get into. And if you enjoy working with chemistry, leather, and your hands, it could be a very, you know, easy, good start to find a job upon graduation, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic because you have these. Essentially, it starts off with Northampton being a town which is around 1 hour north of London, and you have all these very old, prestigious British shoe brands, right? Like Crockett and Jones, Church's, John Lobb, even Dr. Martens comes from there,
Yeah,
and
the MPS, the original solo wear, they're
yeah, yeah,
makers of,
they
yeah.
all come from that area because back in the day, this was the area where they were making all the shoes, and they also had all the livestock, all the animals, all the cows were around in that area.
That's awesome. So thanks for that sharing that little bit of knowledge that might be quite hidden actually for a person who might be interested in the industry.
Very specific.
Yeah, it is. So I had the privilege to be in Northampton last year. I was pretty, you know, excited to be just in the city, and I stopped by a few leather dealers and stuff like that. So there's definitely a leather history in the town as well. So now we know a bit about your, you know, background in leather. Before we get into the sustainability of the industry, what is your definition of truly luxurious leather? What kind of leather goods you like, you buy and use and cherish as a person who knows a thing or two about leather?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair question. Most importantly is the authenticity of leather in the sense of that is as natural as possible and that it ages well over time. That is the thing that I look for most. And this often doesn't really have anything to do with pricing of a product, it's just about the substance of it. And for example, my bags and my shoes that I have, I wear them for what, 10 to 15 years already. And I take good care of them, and I hope that they go with me another 30, 40 years. So I'm not really planning on changing them. I don't think that's what the fashion brands really want to hear because they like it if you buy a lot of new things, but a good leather product should last you half a lifetime. That's at least what I think. And yeah,
I think so. I think leather as a material is a, you know, a durable, versatile choice. It's just buying for life. You buy it, you cherish it, and it ages. It gets better with use. It doesn't fall apart. It just, you know, breaks in and just looks better and better, build that character with you. So you said that authenticity and quality doesn't correlate with the price, or not, doesn't necessarily correlate with the price, you know, how expensive it is. Where do you buy those type of crafts from usually? Do they come out of, you know, top luxury brands, or do they come out of a local maker? Who uses those kind of leathers to make crafts you like and you will cherish?
well, that's a good question because there are a lot of people, especially smaller shops or smaller manufacturers, that take a lot of pride and put a lot of value in buying and procuring high quality leather. And I mean, most luxury brands do so as well over the years. But it should be something that if you look at leather in the sense of usability and durability, how many times you're actually using something. Over the span of a lifetime, it becomes very inexpensive. So
Right.
let's say if you have a pair of shoes that you buy for $500, but you wear them for 10 years, then it's a lot cheaper than buying sports shoes every twice a year because they don't really last longer.
Right, exactly. It's a good way to look at the value of it, like how many days you will keep or use them, and then divide the price to that to actually compare your daily expenditure for that purchase in the leather space. I think leather being a durable item, if you're willing to use it a long time, I think leather comes up pretty much one of the cheapest options when you look at from that perspective. How a person determines that quality, that true quality of leather, without knowing the things you know about leather, like just typical user doesn't know the details of leather and would like to get a good leather item. What do they look for? How do they understand the quality?
That is quite a tricky question because there there are so many different things and so many different functions of leathers at the end of the day. Um, how would I best describe it? I think something that is like a semi-aniline, less pigmented leather that has a good hand feel to it, that absorbs some moisture, that is polishable to some extent. You can see that by also the grain tightness, which is for me one of the most important criteria. Is there any loose grain? Meaning that if you fold leather and you bend it a bit, do you see a lot of wrinkles or not? So you see,
Right.
is the skin, is the grain tight? Will it wear nicely? Will it become polishable over the years? So that is one of the main criteria that I think about before purchasing anything.
So because you want to keep things longer time, you enjoy that aged leather look, as far as I understand that patina, and a little bit absorption of the moist and your hand oils, and pretty much like that less pigment, that less interference between your touch, minimally finished, truly clean leathers. I think you enjoy the
Exactly.
most, and if a person just touches it and it feels a little cold and dead and plasticky, probably it's a little too much finish and not to your
Yeah, and
taste.
probably it's to cover something up, right? It's
True.
if you have a beautiful skin, you don't need a lot of finishing materials or polyurethanes, acrylics, and binders in order to make it more beautiful, right? It just inherently has its beauty of its own. But if you're really trying to cover it up with as much pigment and it looks like it's some petrochemical based textile, then probably it's not really what you should be buying.
Yeah, I use two analogies here to kind of give people a little bit more understanding of what we mean when we say clean leather, or something to hide on the leather. Like when you have the premium steak, you only need a little bit of salt and pepper, and that's it. That flavor just comes
Yeah,
out naturally. But if you have just droppings of all kinds of meat, just a little bit of the lower grade stuff, you make a meatball with it, you make a hot dog with it, with a lot of fillers and ingredients to come up with some taste to it.
yeah.
So leather is the same, I think. If you have a truly
It's the
high
same.
quality material, you
It's
embrace
it's the
that.
same, but I like to look at it as well. If you just look at the high luxury brands, they have some very specific articles that have a lot of pigmented finishing on it. They have great raw material quality, just their finishing is very different. And I like to compare this, just like you said, with steak. It's like Wagyu, right? It's
Right.
it's gonna taste great. Doesn't matter if you overcook it a bit or you undercook it a bit, still Wagyu at the end of the
Right.
day. So it's you can see it as that as well. But yeah, if you want a product to really last forever and you really use it, then you would want something that changes color over time, that isn't fully pigmented and has some level of absorption, that your natural oils, when you touch it, they get into it and they make it more beautiful, they polish it, and it gets a nicer shine.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have to say this. The leather you described is really hard to find in that top end of the luxury, because of the size of their production requirements, and everything has to look the same to a certain criteria. They really don't go opt in using those kind of finishes. They go with heavier pigments, heavier finishes, so it looks the same. It stays clean for a long time. Is that true? Like, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I do feel the same way, but the reason they do it is a very different one. They would love to buy a very natural semi-aniline leather, But then they get issues that they don't like working with, especially handbag brands. They need very large panels and very large and good cutting efficiency. And when it's not fully covered and uniform, you don't really have an homogeneous product because leather isn't a homogeneous product. Every skin is a bit different. And that's because you're dealing with something that's very natural. And if you're trying to make it all the same, then of course you need to sacrifice some of its beauty for um, basically the requirements that you have. If it's the physical requirements of like rub fastness or a Veslic dry rub, all these different types of tests that they have to pass a very stringent requirements for being released to the market. Because you can have a bag that as soon as you start wearing it, the color comes off, right?
Yeah.
So that would be unfortunate. Yeah, and some brands they really do sacrifice beauty over that, but some brands are also very good at making this their strength, right?
Yeah, some brands are very careful, and that's what I'm trying to see for people. There are very impressive large brands. They are really keeping a tight principle there to not over finish the leather, hide that beauty to the, complete easy route of standardization. So I have big respect for those. I think Hermes was one of it, and then I think Bottega used pretty much very close to natural as much as they can at their sizes. So I appreciate those two brands so far with their leather mindset. So now we discussed the quality of leather a little bit. How leather is made, what are the main steps into the tannery side of things, and where does it start, where does it end, how long it takes, what it takes to turn the rawhide into a leather for a bag.
Wow, yeah, there are a lot of one of the reasons why leather is expensive is because there are so many steps involved, and it is an incredibly difficult product to work with. It all starts with buying the right raw material. How do you know that the raw material you bought is actually of good quality? You have a lot of trust to your suppliers that, so for example, we don't tan our leather, we retan our leather. So we buy ready-made tanned leather in wet blue and wet white, and then we finish it in the sense of that we're fat liquoring it in the drums, we're dyeing it in the drums, and then we're drying it. And after that, you stake it as well as then you finish it. But most people they have the tanning process, so the unhairing, the getting rid of all the dirt, of all the fat, all the different things, splitting the leather so you make the suede, or you have something that goes into hydrolyzed collagen, and then of course you have the full grain, top grain leather that you can work with. And depending on specification, it is very difficult to know what you buy. So you start with buying something that the industry calls TR, which means Tannery Run, which is you get a batch of hides, let's say one or two lots. Let's say you have 500 skins, but there's hair on it. You don't know the quality of it because the hair is still on it. You can't see any open scratches, any defects, any problems that the product inherently has. So you first have to remove all the skin, all the hair, and then you know what you actually got. But at that point, you already bought it. So
Right.
it's a little bit of a gamble every time, and we cannot make any calculations based on the raw material we buy. We never really know what we're going to get because tanneries work in a way that we sell different selections of material. So we will have different weight classes of how large the animals are. Let's say you have anywhere between 24 to 27 kilograms, which is right more the ox heifer category, and then you have 30 plus bulls, which are in kilo how heavy the whole entire hide is, and then you have the much larger material, which is 40 to 50 kilos, and depending on this. We deal in selection within it. So let's say we have a 1, 2, 3, or whatever you call ABC selection, and then you have a split. Let's say, okay, from those 500 hides that you bought, you have 20% top end, then you have 50% Bs, and then you have let's say 20% seasoned, and you have 10% which are just rejects, which are out. You can't use them for anything. And yeah, this split can be very different depending on the
Right.
year, depending on the weather, depending on where the animals come from, how good the animal husbandry was, especially how old the animals were and how they were kept, because the cows are very similar, like human beings. The more that we're alive, the more scratches we get. We run into things, and so do they.
Right.
Um, yeah, exactly.
That's a huge world in itself, you know. Rawhide expertise is may take you a lifetime to, you know, build a reliable experience to, you know, educatedly guess where to get your rawhides and what you're gonna get out of it a little bit. But even in those cases, as you said, the climate, you know, that year the weather went too rainy or it was too dry. That makes an impact on the skin you're gonna get from that batch. And that's a good example. Maybe people never thought about this with leather. They all come with hair at the beginning. You know, all leathers, sheep's, goats, cows has the hair first. And when I have this hair, you can't see what's on my skull, right? Until we take the hair off, we don't know the grain quality. As you said, did I have a skin disease underneath, or did I have a lot of scars underneath? That's
Exactly.
when the gamble starts. It's like, oh, I got a great batch, or well, you know, this year I'm not lucky enough, so start thinking about what I'm gonna do with this leather now. And that's where that finish shapes up as we see what we have in the material. Then we're like, okay, this is a pretty bad batch, so we're gonna have to use quite heavier finishes. You know, we gotta buff it off a little bit, use pigments, maybe embossing, regraining. So those are the things what I try to refer as you really don't need a high quality leather to accomplish this heavy finish, because pretty much anything will go under some finishes. So that's a good thing that you brought up, which we never mentioned here before, to give that side of the story in the rawhide end of things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So essentially, if you continue, then everything that we do has so many different variables that can happen. Like you said, with the weather, that especially when it's hot in the winter time in Northern Europe, you have a lot more parasites, a lot more ticks, so the animals have a lot more, yeah, these bites on their skin, and you can see that. And yeah, it does change from year to year. But when we continue, then we've bought the raw hides and we tan them. So we have somebody that does it in tanning, in either in contract tanning, or we buy tanned leather already that we can buy in TR or in selection. And from then on, we process them in our facility. So we start with something they call shaving. All the wet blue that we buy or wet white that we buy, which wet blue is the term referred to as chrome tanned leather in the raw state, and wet white is a glutaraldehyde leather based tanning, right?
Synthetic tannins, yeah.
Exactly. And when we shave it, what it means, we take off the substance, we make it thinner and adjust it for how thick our customer wants the leather to be, either if they use it for shoes or they use it for handbags. It really depends, right? If it's 1.2, 1.4 millimeters, it usually goes into handbags, and then everything above 1.6 usually goes into shoes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And please.
And how long it takes from that, let's say the half finished state of wet blue or wet white until the finished leather is done in the tannery, like time wise?
It could take, depending on how complex the article is, it could take anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks, usually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
that's
a long process. It
undertakes so many
changes.
processes, yeah.
So many people touches the leather so many times until it's done. You know, it's when you look at how it's made videos or some of these things where you see like fully machinized, robotized factories, you know, take the material and then output on the other end. Leather is not like that. I don't think it will ever be like that. It's
Mm,
always, you know, somebody handles it in this process and then finishes and then takes it to the another process, and there's always a person, a craftsman,
Yeah,
has to handle it with an understanding and feeling of that craft at each step, which makes leather super different, in my opinion, when we compare it to the other alternatives, which is all made by fully automated machines and mills.
exactly. I mean, most of the people that are working in our factory, they've been there anywhere between 15 and 25 years. So it's really a handcraft, and every single skin has people touching it. And there are so many mechanical processes that leather goes through, that it's difficult to generalize, or even homogenize any type of production. It really is everything has a certain touch of expertise to it. Without it, it's very difficult to make.
Exactly. It's very difficult to replace any of those team members you have there 15, 25 years. Each one built their expertise for the machine or step they're working with. They assess each and every skin if it's done or not in that step or mechanical action. On the other side, if it's a fully machinized production line, you can pretty simply or quickly train another person and then replace just to oversee the machinery so that the production continues. But in the tannery, it's not like that. You have to rely on that experience, hand feel of the
Exactly.
craftsman. Let's get into the sustainability aspect of things now. We discussed how leather is done and what is it, where is it coming from. We get this pretty common attack on the leather industry, like leather is not sustainable, or there are more sustainable options. Where is this coming from? And in the highest level of question, is leather really sustainable overall, in your opinion? And we can start from there.
I think the answer to this is that it definitely can be. For what we've seen in the past, there was generally a lot of bad practice about how leather was made, especially in um, lower developing countries. And there are a lot of third-party auditors that are basically ensuring and looking that we do our best practice and that we're becoming better at what we do every day. So, yeah, leather can be sustainable in the sense of, if you consider the use case of it, if you use it, right, like for a lifetime, I don't think that there is a product that can be more sustainable, right? If you use leather for, let's say, 30 years, or you have a shoe you have for 10 years, a handbag for 20 years, the usability of it definitely makes it one of the most sustainable products that does exist. But if you compare it to any petrochemical-based textile, that for sure can be an argument, I would suppose.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because of the long-term use of it, you don't need other materials to be made again and again for repeat purchases because alternatives will fall apart. And there's other issues with it, like once they fall apart, there's that microplastic issue. They don't biodegrade themselves in millions of years when we talk about plastic alternatives. So definitely leather as a material, I think it's very sustainable choice when it's used in the slow fashion understanding. And in this sense, the question goes into two different routes. One, what part of the industry raises that question of sustainability? Leather as a material is sustainable because it's a byproduct of the meat industry, now turns into a long time fabric to be used again. That's great. But in the tanning side, I think there is that some questionable actions come into place, right? Like the pollution or things like that.
Exactly.
What can you say about those activities and how it is being managed, handled, and improved by those, responsible tanneries, responsible firms in the industry to ensure everything's sustainable?
Yeah, I think that definitely sustainability becomes a big part, and it's driven by the brands, and the brands get it from their customers. And people want more transparency. They want to see the supply chain. They want to see where does the skin come from? Where do the animals come from? Have they been raised properly? Have they been taken care of properly? And all these different questions. Has there been any excessive pollution to the environment, right? Does it come from, let's say, the deforestation area in the Amazonas, right? These are all questions. And then again, we're very big on only using animals that have not been slaughtered for the purpose of leather, right? So usually, this whole discussion starts with, okay, the cows die for the sake of meat production, but this is also not true. Actually, the main purpose in terms of, if you're talking revenue of a cow's lifespan, is the dairy production, right? And basically, meat is a byproduct of the dairy production, mostly, because a cow in its lifetime makes anywhere in between 10 to 15,000 US dollars worth of dairy products, whereas the its 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 body in weight, the price of it is just a fraction of it. It's less than 10%. And of those 10%, leather is not even 5%. So at least in our tannery, we do not deal with any products that have been especially raised for its skin. And the question is always like, okay, what do we do with the skin when it's already there, right? The animal has been slaughtered, so what do we do with it, right? Do we put it into hydrolyzed collagen, which either becomes makeup, toothpaste, it becomes gelatin, of course. It has a lot of different use cases, but do we make something beautiful out of it because it is already there, or should we just bury it if the cows get slaughtered anyway? So that is always a very important discussion, right? So we're very much against everything that is for the sake of the skin, just raised for this. For example, alligators, crocodiles is, I think, a very difficult subject because the highest value that the animal has is its skin, right?
Right.
So we actually have a byproduct and we make something out of it that you can't putrefy over time, right? And if it's done in a responsible way, then, and it's used for a long time, then it actually can be a very sustainable thing.
Yes, I 100% agree. So, because of all this byproduct nature of the raw hide, due to the dairy and meat industry, and then being a durable item in the long run, as long as it is tanned in a responsible way, I think it's one of the most sustainable materials we can use, we can choose these days, and it's versatile. It can be applied to so many areas, upholstery, jackets, garments, shoes, handbags, even home decor, so many things that even people back in the day, they made, shelter, tents out of leather hides and all that stuff. I saw one example in a leather exhibition in Germany, actually, in Frankfurt, if I was not wrong. Back in the day, leather, big elephant skins and things like that were used as a tent material for people to live under, and things like that. So it's super applicable to all aspects of life as a durable, long-lasting material. So in this sense, we already compare it to the other alternatives, the petrochemical derivatives. How about the vegan leather options? What do you think about these? True vegan, though. I'm not talking about plastic relabeled vegan because it's the trend these days. I'm talking about these leather alternatives coming from plant materials like the cactus, the mushrooms, and I think pineapple. People start to make different things.
Latex.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, they call it vegan leather. It's not leather, that's a fact.
Yeah,
There's also
it's a
nothing,
paradox. Vegan
there's
cannot
nothing
be
that
leather, leather cannot be
discussed.
vegan.
No, I think it's good that they're finding alternatives, absolutely, and they should continue their research. And if there's something that genuinely is better than leather and it comes along, and so may be it, I'm all for it. But thinking about the fact that I have a lot of customers that tried these products, and I've heard things that it does not work in the way that they were imagining it. I do also think that their energy footprint is also quite high. I don't see it being a permanent solution for the future. But that's right. That's if you have leather already, calling it vegan leather is Yeah, it's just a marketing. I
It
think
is.
it's
It
just
is
a marketing.
marketing. It is marketing, and I appreciate the research and innovative approaches in plant-based alternatives. Even though, yes, there is a big production process goes into that, energy footprint and other probably process residues comes from those processes as well, just like tanning, and it could be a great alternative for people who don't want to use animal products. There are people who adapt the vegan lifestyle. I have huge respect for, and
Yeah,
leather is
absolutely.
not an option for them. So maybe these truly plant-based alternatives is great option. But I never see this vegan leather is a replacement for leather. It's not going to happen. As long as we eat meat, leather is going to be here, and
Absolutely.
leather is truly different special material with a lot of people love, so they're not going to go for vegan leather options, and plastic is just a fake imitation of this leather just to make things a little bit cheaper and trickier, and that will have its place, keep its place in the market, but they will not replace leather as well. So I appreciate the research being like innovative solutions to be done for the vegan people out there, which also don't want to use the plastics instead of leather. I think there's value there, but it's not a, to me, it's not a competition. It's more like a collaboration, providing a value for a different crowd, different lifestyle mindset.
No, absolutely. I respect that. I think it's great that research is done in that field, and I think it's necessary. It's a whole different product. I don't think you can compare it even to leather, because if you look at the terminology for leather, countries are now starting, like Italy, that there is a very special legislation that if you're calling something leather, it does have to come from an animal skin. So that
Right.
is a prerequisite that you have. And calling it vegan leather is just a misrepresentation of what the product actually is, right?
Right.
It has the prestige of using the word leather, but it isn't leather in essence, right?
Exactly.
It's a
Exactly.
textile, whatever it may be for textile, whatever plant-based it may be, and that's fantastic, but it's just not leather.
Exactly. It would be like um, hot ice, or wet fire. It's they just they it cannot be. It's not going to be like that. We touched upon this aspect in the sustainability question a couple minutes earlier.
Yeah, we can also
So
talk about it a bit more. I
yeah.
mean, there's a lot to talk about in terms of sustainability.
Right. One thing I'm gonna ask here though, like it's a long-term durable product. Once we use a leather bag, and what happens to it? Like, how is the biodegradability with leather products we use? We are gonna use them a long time, and then what happens to them afterwards? Because we know the plastic ones, they go into landfills and they
Yeah.
stay for a long time. Plastic is not a ideal solution there, as long as it's not recycled. What happens to leather once we're done with it?
Well, exactly the same thing as with all the other materials if it isn't recycled, right? Or if it is
Mhm.
not biodegradable. Right now, biodegradability is becoming a larger topic that we're exploring, and we have been one of the first tanneries that has actively been doing research and development on not only biodegradability, but also compostability of leather. So, right, if you have the right environments for composting leather, it will disintegrate and become part of the earth again, right? About its environment. And we've done this with a new tech. It's not a new technology, but it's just recently come up again because more brands are asking for it. It's called zeolite. And zeolite tanning is not chrome based, it's not glutaldehyde based. It essentially is a mineral tanning based on aluminum, silicon, and oxygen. So three
Okay.
elements that are abundant in Earth, and they fully disintegrate after 45 days when you put them into the right composting and biodegrading environment, right? Um, yeah, so that is really something that's very interesting at the moment. We've been doing this for a couple of different brands, and it's a fantastic development, right?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I want to work with this biodegradable leather you mentioned. I started my research thanks to your samples here. So having something, decompose itself in 45 days in land as a leather, it's very impressive. I'm gonna do my experiments with it too. But what about other leathers, like the most common leathers we do use today, like the chrome tans, the vegetable tans, how biodegradable they are, and how long it takes, and can we use the decomposition of it afterwards, um, once they're
I
completely
think
done?
that would be quite difficult, especially for chrome tan leather. Chrome, most leather, I would say 95% of leather worldwide is chrome tanned with chrome 3 oxide, which is the not only the cheapest way to tan leather, but is also by far the best way to tan leather. Um, and making leather is something that you should never be able to destroy the product, right? But this
Right.
kind of defeats the purpose when you're talking about biodegradability. Because if you see a lot of these archaeological sites, they're digging up things from thousands of years ago, and they have leather shoes on, or leather tents or remnants of animal skin, and they're still there when they're preserved properly. Um, this makes it, of course, very difficult, right,
Mhm.
to really talk about the idea of biodegradability for normal leathers that are commonly used throughout industry.
What other sustainability related issues are in the industry today, like, besides the pollution, besides the animal welfare and all that stuff? Like, what other points you guys are paying attention, or what things brands are requesting from you from this
So
sense?
we pay a lot of attention to traceability, right? So knowing where the animals came from, what farms they grew up in, where they had their first vaccine, where they got slaughtered, how they got transported, how much they have been transported. This is incredibly important for us to calculate our carbon footprint. And we have all this emission, and we have all this data from a system called BOVEX, which every animal has a sort of passport, which is an ear tag, especially in the European Union. And we can see where they have been raised, how they have been transported, where they eventually got slaughtered, and then where they, yeah, to what tanneries they went to, right? So we have we can request and we have the possibility to mark every leather with a unique tracking number that is the same as their passport number. So we can see at the end when we're selling leather to our finished customer, they can see the tag still in the leather skin. It's laser engraved, and they can see in the database where these animals came from, right? So this is
So
a yeah something that's slowly starting, but is becoming more and more important.
I see that, some of the letters I get these days has that engraved numbers. Usually it's a large number, 6, 7 digits,
Yeah.
um, and I know it's traceability reasons, but I didn't know it's to that extent. Where the animal was being transported and all that stuff. What else can you tell by having that number? Or as a person, let's say I'm gonna use that leather for my brand Pegai, what can I find out by using that number? Or is there a database accessible to me as a user of that leather as a brand?
So for most of these stamps that are still in leather today, they have nothing to do with the ear tag numbers of the animals.
Hmm.
They're just internal SKU reference numbers that they're putting into stamping into the leather to see what batch was it. If there's any problem with the raw material, they can see because not everything that you do in tanning you can really see if there's any problem. You can maybe just see it when you finish the leather, right? Or if you use it for a couple of months and then maybe you have some problems with color migration, and then you can trace it back to was there a mistake made in the tanning process on that day with that batch number. But now we get the possibility to have the ear tag numbers and see where the cows came from, right? The bulls and the cows, where were they raised? Was it regenerative farming? Um, we're very big on procuring hides from regenerative farms, especially from Northern Europe. We have a large partner that we work with, and they provide all this data for traceability purposes to our customers, right?
What does regenerative farming means? Like, why is it special?
It's special because it's not keeping the animals inside all the time, and it also changes the land usage changes, right? So they're not on the same field. They're also not only cows and bulls on the field, but there are also maybe some pigs and some chickens, and the regenerative farming is made so that um, just the basic animal welfare and the quality of the land becomes superior again over time.
So it's more like replicating how it would be in the natural habitat.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
live in a
It's how it
mixed
was
condition.
thousands
They
of
go
years
around.
and not just having the land for the sole purpose of raising animal feed, right? Or raising animals in general.
I see. I see. Okay. And how does one, as a consumer, pay attention to the sustainability matter in leather shopping or leather research? Like, how do they know they're getting something coming from responsible, sustainable resources or tanneries?
So I would start off with this is difficult because usually the brands only look at this, right? And then they can say that okay, all of our suppliers are sustainable, but maybe that means most of the high-end brands require you to be LWG Gold certified. So LWG is the Leather Working Group, which is the most important to date um, auditing um, company essentially that goes to all different tanneries worldwide and ranks them from bronze to gold. And every 1.5 years, we have to do a new audit where the requirements become a lot more difficult, and especially in terms of energy usage and water consumption, about traceability of your raw materials. They look through all your data. They look through all the tannery's data, and they come to your tannery for 2 to 3 days, and they go around and they check every little thing, from housekeeping to um, talking to your employees if they're getting paid properly, if the things that they're doing are safe, if the chemicals are safe, they're properly stored, if you have a chemical management system, if you have an emergency management system, all these different types of things, and it always is becoming more difficult. We were one of the earlier tanneries that started having LWG Gold. We started in 2013 because we were working with some high-end brands that really required us to move forward with this, and we're really grateful that we did. And we have kept it, I think, 5 or 6 times now. From 2013 to 2000, yeah, 22 was our last audit, and we have our audit again next year. So I would say every tannery that has a gold standard, at best, right, definitely silver and gold and bronze as well, is something to look out for, right? Because it is already audited against the LWG standards, right?
Right.
Which
So
guarantees some sustainability practices, best practices of tanneries.
that's great because, it's a huge area. There is a lot of moving parts in the entire supply chain, from the rawhide traceability to the tanning, environmental, responsibility, employment practices, ethical treatment, all that stuff. It's impossible for one to do all that research, or even the brands, but it seems like the LWG is a good authority as establishing here to do those
Absolutely.
audits for on behalf of consumer and brands.
Absolutely. They've done a lot of great things for the industry so far, by
Right.
raising the standards for everybody and also giving us incentives to become better at what we do. So
Right.
essentially, it's benefiting everybody, right?
Right.
And it's rewarding the people that are doing the due diligence for practicing sustainability inside their companies.
Right. And you said the criteria is getting tougher and tougher every year and a
Yes,
half. Like,
yes. It's getting tougher and tougher every year, especially with now they had last audit was very based on chemical usage and reducing things like VOCs, solvents, and that type of thing in production. Most chemicals now in the leather industry, when it comes to finishing, are water-based. in comparison to 20 years ago, where everything was based on
solvent.
isopropanol and different type of more VOC based chemicals, right? So we're constantly trying to eradicate any harmful substances in the manufacture. And the thing is, we don't know where this will stop, right? This will probably stop when you can actually make leather with just water. And
I don't think that's possible.
yeah, I don't
So,
think so either. But I asked them, so how often do I still have to do this? And because it is a lot of preparation. You have to do a lot of investment. Most of the company's profits, they're reinvested into sustainable practices in order to be right in the forefront of the sustainability cause, especially in an industry which is often deemed as controversial as ours. Um, but there are ways to make this product in a very sustainable way, and we do have to show for it, and that's why it's good
right.
that they exist.
And yes, I agree that, innovation doesn't stop. At least the companies doesn't stop innovating will continue to survive in the industries because there is always someone willing to be better, willing to go the next mile to make things better from any and every perspective. So as a company like you guys are willing to keep up with this, cutting edge, I think it's important, and that's why probably you are the sixth generation talking here today leather. That's why probably most of the companies that started with your grandfathers didn't make it today. So it is
Yeah,
important.
I mean there were a
It's
lot
good
of
business.
tanneries in this area at that time. Back in at the moment, Germany has I think 12 or 13 leather factories left operating.
No
We all
way.
do different
Only?
things. Only. If you think
Oh my
about
God.
Italy, Turkey, which is nothing, right? Here,
Oh,
but we
my
used to be
hometown had maybe 50 tanneries up until 20
probably.
years ago. Well, not today though, not today. Today maybe three left, but yeah, it's in the same direction.
Yeah, I mean, every country has its kind of leather industry area, right? If it's in
Right.
Italy, if it's like Arzignano or Santa Croce, right? Or if it's here in Germany, if it's here in the North Rhine-Westphalia, um, every country kind of like Northampton in the UK, they all have their little areas where the leather industry used to be playing a big role. But nowadays it's all over the place and becoming smaller. And in the sense of that there are fewer companies, but the ones that do make it, they become a lot larger.
Right. And because they are more responsible, they're better, and they keep innovating. They're respectful to environment, their employees, their society, and everything. And that is a really incredible job, to be one of the 12, 14 tanneries left in Germany today, because it is really difficult. Like, this is how labor intense job it is, how much investment it requires, and how much uncertainty is in the nature of the business. Like we said, we don't know what the rawhide is going to turn out when we buy it, and you buy it anyways. Like, even if it's bad, it's too late. You gotta go through with it. So this is a very like risky gambling kind of
Yeah,
business,
we all gamble.
and
This is the
yeah.
joke that we have. We never know what we're getting until we have it, and then either it's good or it's bad. But at the end of the day, hopefully, if you have a good supplier that you're trusting for many years, then it usually turns out not too bad.
Right, exactly. And it's kudos to you guys to be one of those few made it in Europe. It definitely tells you did a bunch of things right for a really long time, and that shows. And that you guys keep pushing the limit again with keeping up with LWG. My question there, like, if they keep changing the criteria, is like, let's say chemicals can be used or cannot be used every year or every 2 years, do they let you know, like, hey guys, by the way, we changed this metric now, and do they give you enough time to prepare, change your
Yeah, they
recipe?
do
Because
give you enough time to prepare.
yeah, because you can't, just, oh, okay, then, I'm gonna replace this chemical with something else that I don't know what's the impact gonna be. It needs a lot of research, even if you just want to replace one chemical out of your recipes, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, there are new developments at the moment, and especially the upcoming changes also, they are difficult to, yeah, how do you say that? To realize them in a given amount of time. And the brands, they want it done faster than legislation wants it done, and yeah, so for now, we're just trying to phase everything out that is not going to be appropriate anymore by the year 2025. But we're talking about things that are not incredibly harmful inherently at the minute. It's really just getting away from things that are not really regenerative or sustainable or green chemistry, and replacing those with a more sustainable option.
That's pretty cool. And how the big brands or in general brands approach these, because I know you guys supply a lot of brands, and that's how we connected, right? Like
Yeah, we're
when
cutting up a
when
lot of my a lot of my leather. No, that's why I wrote you the email. And
yeah, like I want to share that part. One day I received the email from Philip, and I see the Richard Hoffmans there. I'm familiar with the name. I have like five of their leathers from I think an exhibition in New York before in 2018. You know, I use it as one of my like kind of meditation practices. At time to time, I just open my drawer and smell the leather. It's one of their articles, and I'm like, hey, I know your Tannery, and his email was saying you've been cutting up a lot of brands that uses my leather. I just wanted to reach out and say hi. So that's how we got to know each other. That was funny.
that's no, that's fun. Yeah, for sure. No, you talk about the meditation aspect of that, smelling the leather. There's some fun stories to it that, especially the one that you were talking to about the article Palmer, which is this messenger bag leather. I had one of the largest car companies approach us and said, "We love the smell of your leather so much, we want to have it in our cars. Can you please tell us what it is?" And I was like, "Well, this I can't really tell you." And we also didn't really know how they got a hold of our leather because we don't really make anything for automotive. And they said, "Okay, we'll get back to you." And they're trying to really figure out with every different type of GCMS or GCFID or XRF analysis to see what are the molecules inside the leather that make it smell that way. And then they came back to us, so look, we had tried 6 months to recreate that scent of the leather that you have. We just haven't found anything that recreates it. Can you sell us the recipe? And we're like, okay, let us check. And then we looked at it, and for automotive, you have very specific chemical requirements in the sense of, right, because it gets very hot in the car. So you have something like called a fogging value, and fogging is when you have the sunlight that hits the leather seats, and there's the humid vapor that basically covers your windshield. And you're not allowed to have that in automotive leather. But for handbag leather, this is very normal. And these chemicals you cannot use if you want to have these fogging values. So we said, look, it makes no sense as much as we feel flattered about it. But
Yeah, oh, that's a great story. I didn't know that, and I didn't even know you have all these tests. Is it like an electron microscope or something? They just you
yeah,
put it.
you have a lot of different type of analysis for leather, especially for checking for restricted substances. Everything has to be RSL compliant. Everything has to, right, be REACH compliant, and so they do a lot of chemical analysis, especially to look for very harmful things that can occur in leather, like chrome 6, or yeah, things like formaldehyde. Although the ppm, so the parts per million value of formaldehyde in leather is, I think, is 3 ppm is allowed, but every apple has 10 ppm of formaldehyde in it, which is ridiculous. So
Yeah, I
oftentimes
heard that. I heard those
our
stories. Like the things
legislation,
we eat has more than leather.
yeah, sometimes the restrictions that we have are a lot more strict than what we consume daily, and there's a purpose for it, but sometimes it's just too much.
Right. So this is interesting. And Chrome 6 is another subject that
Yeah.
it's an idea there. Unfortunately, in the forums and internet, people who know or who just read it somewhere a little bit and then know all about Chrome 6 and start talking about it. What can you tell about Chrome 6 and Chrome leathers? Like, what is it? Why is it dangerous? And like, what tanneries do to make sure it's not a problem?
So essentially, Chrome 6 gets developed from hexavalent chromium. So the problem with it just gets created when I think Chrome 3 oxide oxidizes into Chrome 6. I think my teacher is going to kill me for that because I'm not familiar with the chemistry anymore. But basically, the problem with it's quite toxic. So if you burn leather or anything, you create Chrome 6, and you shouldn't inhale it. It can cause skin irritations. It gets created often through natural fat liquors and that are derived of natural, let's say, some fish oils that are used in the retanning, or some extreme heat that's
Right.
used. It can also come from very different sources like dyestuffs or chemicals that haven't been properly manufactured. It can come from a lot of different things. Luckily, we haven't had any major issues with this ever, but there are tanneries that there is always once in a while some product that gets recalled from the shelves because they found Chrome 6 levels which are above normal in the leather.
Right.
So every leather has a little bit. It's like every body has cancer cells, but not all of them are bad, right? It's the
Right.
same with leather. There are some in every, but they are so minor that you can
So
just neglect.
minuscule.
So yeah,
Right.
they're nearly non-detectable, right?
And as far as I know, it's dangerous if you eat them or inhale them, as you said.
Yeah.
Like if you burn them and inhale them, as long as you're not eating your leathers and you're not burning and smelling the smokes
Also, when it
on
touches
purpose.
skin, some of you can get very bad skin irritations from it if
Right.
it's leather that
If
you
you're
have.
sensitive, skin irritation is the other
Yeah,
aspect. Yeah.
yeah. But all the larger brands that have leather products, they test their leathers from Chrome 6 constantly, so you don't
Yeah.
have to be afraid that there's any Chrome 6 in any of the products that you're wearing right now. So,
Right, exactly. Since this is the most well-known, potential danger, and Chrome is the most commonly used thing, this is probably the most commonly employed test to ensure the levels are not to the point that are not acceptable or dangerous. So it's not a topic that people who use leather should be concerned at this point, as long as you're getting your leathers from somewhat reliable brands and vendors, tanneries. But if you're really going for this very dark, cheap leather options, you might find some of those things there because probably the tests are not there and you're not sure where the leather is coming from. But it's extreme if it's extremely cheap and from very unknown sources.
mhm.
So, how do the big brands approach this sustainability aspect when they're sourcing their leathers? Like, what is their approach to these certifications, environmental sustainable practices? What do they do when they come to talk to you, on a potential agreement to buy their leathers from you?
So yeah, especially if you talk about the very high luxury brands, they only come to you if you have LWG Gold. Like the very top of the range brands, they only talk to you if you have that. And if you don't, if you lose it, if you lose like a Michelin star, right, you're out directly.
Right.
There's no discussion about it. There's some people that are very understanding if there are some changes to it, but that is a kind of a prerequisite. In order, it's you need to have it in order to be able to play in that league, and that is definitely a very important thing. They also look at, of course, now traceability is more becoming an issue. Most tanneries are not like ours in the sense that they're very willing to disclose their supply chain, in the sense of where they buy their material, and where the farms were, of the animals that they procure their hides from, and yeah, that is more and more becoming something that is of interest for the brand, right? But the question is always like, how much do you really want to know, right? Do you really want to know the name of the cow, right?
Right. Right.
Usually, it's not really, cows don't have names, right? They have
Right.
serial numbers that are in a database. And that, of course, is a thing like the consumer doesn't necessarily want to know that. And if they do, they
Right.
should be able to, right? It's
Right.
just the whole traceability story is about, right, ending greenwashing and really practicing due diligence and see, okay, you have this product, you can look it up, you can see where it came from, you can see the farm where the animal has been raised, how long it's been there, the transported ways that it went, how much carbon emissions you had, right, going from A to B. And you can see the entire supply chain, right, which is becoming transparent. Right. So also we are part of the UNECE blockchain pilot,
Hmm.
which is for the leather industry to make supply chains more um, transparent, which is a very good initiative inherently, and it's moving along. It's a bit slow, but I do think it will bear fruits at some point soon.
Yeah, I think so. It's promising to hear all these new initiatives to make things more transparent. I think it is a more of a pattern now in all of these interviews I run into. Leather industry has a problem of transparency, not a problem of, you know, true sustainability or being dangerous for anything as a material or as an industry. But we have been a little bit too mystical and secretive so far, or maybe lack of marketing or information sharing. So people didn't know enough, didn't understand how or where the leather was coming from. And this was taken advantage of by groups that are against leather for whatever reason, and this misinformation was able to spread in a pretty large scale. So I'm happy to bring in experts like yourself to discuss these things, you know, really openly. Like, there are downsides of leather tanning and this and that, and this is what is being done. This is what is being, you know, innovative approaches are being developed to make it better every day. Again, leather made itself until this point for thousands of years as a respectable, luxurious material, and it's gonna be there for, you know, long time as well. But to improve things and make things more sustainable and respectful from every sense is important. And everything you shared today is really helpful to help more people understand, you know, the things behind the curtain of leather industry. So I really appreciate um, your time here. That kind of makes up all my questions. Do you have anything else to add from that sense, sustainability or anything leather related here that can
Yeah,
help?
I think so. I think I have one thing about traceability in this sense, right? Because the issue fundamentally is larger than just simply the leather industry. When you talk about raising livestock and right, if you raise the vegan questions as well, I think the whole consumer behavior is starting from dairy and meat has to change. I think that people are consuming way too much meat for their own sake and not good enough quality, of course. And if that already would have been reduced, and we go back to the levels of consuming meat maybe once or twice a week, and instead of a large quantity, better quality, that would already make a large difference, right?
Mm.
So something like this is something that I really advocate because it's not a good thing that if you go to a supermarket and the meat that you buy in a supermarket is cheaper than the dog food that you can buy. Right? So it's really things like this is that it should not be a highly competitive industry, especially because we are the one that are paying the consequences in terms of price because meat is so competitive in pricing that the only thing slaughterhouses make money with is everything else that they sell besides meat, right? They sell the bones, the intestine as well as the skin, are the only sources of profit that they actually have. So in order to change this and in order to have just better animal welfare in general, consuming less, right, meat would already be a good step forward.
I see. Yeah, I didn't know that part either. Yeah, it's interesting approach for sure. But it's it's a incredible feat to change behavior. So I'm um, like again, I don't know how the meat demand will change or will ever
Yeah, it's
decrease,
down a
increase,
lot
or
already.
disappear. Yeah.
I mean,
Is
it
it?
changed a lot already, especially in Europe. This is not because of veganism, but more to do with the energy crisis that people just have less disposable income to spend on meat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they're becoming more conscious and conscious about their choices and buy better quality and less of it, I think that would be a very good idea in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, pretty cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time and all the information experience you shared with us here
Yeah,
today.
thank you so much for inviting me.
And if there's any craftsmen or brands that watch this episode and wanted to get to know about your leathers, your tannery, where do they find you? Like, where do they reach out to? Any websites that
Oh yeah,
you might look to share here?
we thank you. We're usually a bit behind the scenes, right? We work for bigger brands, but we don't really because we're just business to business, right? We don't
Right.
only produce for normal consumers. We do have an Instagram, which is Hoffmans. Mine, how do you call the thing? The lower
At
hyphen. No,
a
the
lower
oh,
underscore.
Hoffman's Leather, an
Okay.
Instagram, and we have Richard Hoffman's leather on our website. You can contact us there as well.
Okay.
We'll be happy
Awesome.
to
Yeah.
answer any questions or talk to you or any inquiries. I'm most welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, I know some craftsmen and other brands watch this as well. If you
Yes.
are of any interest, very natural articles, they have beautiful stuff. Some articles used by very, very high-end brands, lots of them that I've been cutting up on my channel. And I'm experimenting
That's true.
with some of their leathers now. I'm gonna start using some articles in some of my pig eye designs in the coming future too. So
That would
definitely
be
check it out. And
fantastic.
if you want to reach out to Philip and you can't find a way, just tell me. I'll connect you guys.